Hello and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're feeling good today. In this video I'll show you how I edit my photos in Lightroom, especially the ones you can see on my Instagram page. I picked 3 raw photos to show you some of my color grading techniques as well as the way I shape light in my images. And by no means am I a pro, everything I show you is from my own experience. Let's jump right into it. Most of the times I start with the basics, especially with the temperature. I'll go more towards the blue and cool tones. Bump up the exposure a bit. Down the highlights, up the shadows for more details. Then I go straight down to my calibration. So if I move this slider here all the way to the left, you can see what it does. It creates a teal and orange look. I don't want to overdo it, so I'm gonna go between -10 and 20. Because everything I do with my colors, most of the time it happens in the HSL tab. For this shot, I'm gonna desaturate everything except for the blues. I'm gonna go more towards the teal side. I always go too much and then come back again. Now I'm gonna crop it. 4:5 is the Instagram ratio. In my photos, I love to shape light just to draw the attention to a certain object or person. How I do that in Lightroom is easy. Just go to the masking tool, grab a linear gradient. I'm just holding and dragging somewhere around here. If you go to that line, you can just rotate it. I'm gonna bump down the exposure a ton just to see what I'm working with. And with this part here, I'm gonna grab a radial gradient. I'm gonna decrease the contrast 100 or -100. Clarity as well to make it soft, as you can see. And the dehaze, which brings up like a glow effect. I'm gonna up the exposure. What I don't like about this part is the blues on the border, because I want this part to be really white. So I'm gonna desaturate it 100%. I still see some blues, so I'm just gonna go to the temperature, put it more towards the orange. And if it's still not working, just play with the overall shape. With this part, I'm gonna show you a different technique. I'm gonna grab the luminance range, pick this part here. I'm gonna play with my overall range, and now I'm gonna intersect this mask here that I just created with a brush tool. And what that does is if I brush right now, it's only gonna affect, where I can show you, exposure up, it's only gonna affect the part that I'm drawing now, as you can see. And if you went overboard, no problem. You just go to A and just erase parts again. I'm gonna go to the tone curve now. I'm gonna create an S shape to get more contrast. Yet I don't always use this part here, because as I did with some masks here, I shape my light, so I don't usually add light in the tone curve. So I'm just gonna leave it where it was. I want a little bit of fade, so I'm gonna pull this one here up. Just look at the shadow parts. Now I'm gonna go to the color grading, where the magic happens for colors in the shadows, highlights and midtones. I usually don't touch my highlights, I always do shadows and midtones. But for this photo, I'm only using the shadow parts. I'm not gonna touch the midtones, because I love the whitish grayed out look on this one, yet introducing some blue parts in it just to focus more on the architecture itself. So I'm gonna grab my shadows, I'm gonna pull it all the way to 100 saturation. I always am around 200 and 220, and for this one I'm gonna go with like 211ish. I'm gonna pull this one back again. It just adds a bit more saturation in the darker parts, in the shadows, as you can see here if I turn it on and off. And for this shot, I already have something in mind. That's why I can start cropping at the beginning, 4:5 for Instagram. I'm just gonna make it cooler a bit, just because as you can see, there's like frost in it. I'm gonna go straight to my HSL tab for the colors. I'm gonna desaturate everything and introduce my blues again and the aquas. I introduce my reds and the oranges just a tiny bit. So I'm gonna go to my hues, and the blues needs to go a bit more into the teal side. Okay, so I didn't touch my basics. I only did my white balance. I didn't touch the calibration, because everything I did in this shot right now happened in the HSL tab. I already know the sun is coming from this direction here. I'm gonna go overboard. Down with the contrast, down with the clarity, texture, just to make it a bit more soft. Dehaze it, up my exposure, quite a bunch. You can see on the graph, I'm not even clipping here. And now I'm gonna grab another gradient, down the exposure. And now for the third and last gradient for this whole piece is a radial gradient. Yeah, and that's about it, before and after. Okay, now let's do the last edit. I already know I'm gonna crop it and rotate it 4x5 for Instagram. Introduce some contrast, make it cooler. And now I'm gonna go straight into my color grading because I want that bluey, shadowy, bluey thingy pingy. I see a purple tint in those crystals here. I'm gonna get rid of them easily by creating a mask, a luminance range to find out the brightest parts in the image. Play with the overall range. I only want those highlights here. I'm gonna pull down the saturation and make it a bit cooler. Now to make this leaf more red, I'm just gonna pull my orange more towards the red, and now watch. So I'm gonna leave it here, and to finish it off I'm only gonna use 2 more masks, so my eyes automatically go towards that leaf, and a radial gradient, up my shadows and the brightness a bit. Let's say I just want this side here more red. This mask comes in handy, which is called color range. I'm just gonna pick my red, and now, as I did with my other ones, right click, intersect with brush, and I think now you know what I'm about to do. I'm just gonna brush over this one here, and whatever I do now is only affecting this part here, as you can see. Pull out of that image and before and after. So I hope you were able to learn something from this video. Even though I'm not a professional, if you have any questions, feel free to DM me on my Instagram. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourself and spread some love because we all need it. As always, I will see you in the next one.